Hello and welcome to episode 53 of the DX Mentor, the DXpedition to Rotuma, 3 Delta 2 Yankee. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill, AJ8B. If this is the first time you've been joining us, welcome. We have a back catalog of over 50 episodes covering many aspects of DX in both podcast and YouTube format. Please check us out. If you're new to DXing, I would really recommend episode 1 as it was recorded with several world-class DXers. You will get a feel of the excitement that goes with chasing DX. Remember, if you like what you find, please subscribe, like, and share. Instead of my explanation of the Rotuma DXpedition, let's check out what Rotuma2024.com has to say. The Pacific Island Group, PIDXG, is pleased to announce that Gregg, W6IZT, Dean, W2FQ, Nathan, K4NHW, Jamie, M0SDV, Connor, KD9LSV, and Lukas, LY7 Juliet, will operate from Rotuma as 3 Delta 2 Yankee from November 15th to December 4th, 2024, so just a couple of weeks from now. In addition, they will be taking part in the CQ Worldwide Contest using another call sign. The 6-member team will operate locally with 3 500-watt stations on 6 through 160. Additionally, the DXpedition will include 2 of Gregg W6IZT's NexGenRiBs, rig in a box. One of the primary goals of this DXpedition is to, quote, enable DXpeditioning for the next generation of amateur radio operators. Having young operators like 23-year-old Jamie, 23-year-old Connor, and 22-year-old Lukas participate on this DXpedition team goes a long way in fulfilling this mission. Moreover, the DXpedition organizers and Youth on the Air, YOTA, have entered into a unique partnership with this DXpedition by actually applying YOTA's goal of building skills, fostering lasting friendships, and mentoring young operators. To this end, the NexGenRiBs will be operated by a team of young amateur radio operators who will get to experience the excitement that comes with being part of this DXpedition and what goes into making this type of activity a success. End quote. We are also fortunate to have 19-year-old YOTA member Case, W0AAE, play an important role in the 3 Delta 2 Yankee DXpedition. He has volunteered to coordinate and schedule the YOTA operation for the remote stations. I think this is going to be tremendous, and I can't wait to hear about it. So the guests today are always Joe, WAGEX, and then we have Gregg, W6IZT, Dean, W2FQ, and Connor, KD9LSV. Also sitting in will be Gregg, his better half, Wendy. So without any further delay, let's get started. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the DX Mentor podcast. And boy, Joe and I are as excited as we've been in a long time, and that's saying something. We've got a terrific guest. We got a terrific topic, and I can't wait to get started, Joe. So introduce yourself.
Well, some of you know me, and for those that are new, I've been around since 1970. Got started when I was a technician class, working 6 meters. Got hung up on working into the Caribbean and DXing. Been on 62 DXpeditions, some big, some small, and love every minute of it. But unfortunately, I had to retire. I got a bad back, so I had to give up that and instead got with Bill doing these podcasts. So, Greg, tell us a little something about yourself.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Bill. I've been licensed since 1968. I was in the 7th grade. I really didn't get active in DXpeditioning until the mid-'80s because this thing called girls got in the way of ham radio. I'll tell you what, they don't mix.
Yeah.
And so, I was young. Let's see, in 68, I would have been about 13, 14 years old. And shortly after that, I figured out what girls were and took a hiatus from ham radio for a while and got back into it in the late 70s. Got hooked on DXing in the 80s. Back then, these DX nets were very popular.
Yeah.
So I was doing the net thing for a while. My CW was terrible. And but I wanted to try it. So my first CW DX contact was with FR5AI/G on Glorioso.
Wow.
And after that, I was hooked. It took me a few years, but in I think 2012, I made it to the top of the honor roll. I've been on about as half as many DXpeditions as Joe. I think it's 34 or 35 at this point. I really enjoy it. I got connected with George Wallner. George and I met when we went to Navassa in 2016. We were looking at going to Clipperton. George had been to Clipperton. We had met in Dayton in that time frame, and he was talking about the rib. I got involved in working on the ribs with him. COVID came along. Clipperton never happened. So I've been to on George's boat several times. In fact, I kind of took a tally, and I've spent almost 4 months on Magnet over the years. And
Wow.
And Wendy's been on the boat with us, and it's been quite an experience. I think it would have been 2 years ago now. I started talking with George about building a different kind of rib for different use cases, and talked about something smaller. So we're building these smaller ribs, and they're not for parking on a beach like what George is doing, but for complementing DXpeditions in terms of enabling people who may not necessarily be able to go on the trip to participate. And over the last 6-8 months, kind of starting just before Dayton last year, we saw an opportunity to get young hams involved, and met with the Yoda folks at Dayton. And 2 days later, we had a press release announcing our partnership. And that's going tremendously well. We've got 3 young hams going to Rotuma with us. We've got about 30 young hams that are going to be remote operators, and they are incredibly enthusiastic. What's really interesting is the company that has the most representation of our young hams, Turkey.
Really?
Really?
I think we've got 4 or 5 operators from Turkey, and you'll see a press release tomorrow introducing 22 of our young hams that will be participating virtually on this upcoming trip.
That's terrific.
Very good.
And you are W6IZT.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And then we just had somebody join us, Dean, W2 Fox Queen. Dean, tell us about yourself and how many DXpeditions you've been on.
I think Dean, you're muted, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, so you're muted, Dean. Sometimes at work, we don't tell them. We just let them go.
You just,
you got to turn off the mute, Dean. It's a little red microphone with a slash on it on your screen. There you go.
All right. Yeah, I had quite a few of them on here, but
there we go.
Yeah, if I go through, hi everybody. Yeah, for me, I guess if I follow your playbook, I started in high school at an amateur radio club at St. Peter's Prep. And that was by the encouragement of my father, who was a pre-World War II amateur. And I believe he told me his call sign was 2 India Charlie November. So that's how I got started in ham radio, with a couple of breaks in the hobby because of military service. And then as far as getting into DXing, the club was sort of a fraternity, and in the club, everyone was talking about, oh yeah, I got this country and my code speed is now 15, or my code speed 17 words a minute. So Morse code was the thing, and I just happened to like it. And I don't remember where I heard it, to let my fingers do the talking. And I always liked CW, versus going on phone. In fact, over the years, I've been teased about not even know how to use a microphone. So that sparked my interest about trying to contact, DX entities, and obviously starting off with no money, antenna systems were limited. So mostly wire antennas that I used and cut and put up without amplifiers. And then active duty came along. I put together a group of folks going down to Turks and Caicos last year to get some experience at working pileups more than we had worked during field day. And being in Rhode Island, we would always get a pileup because everyone needed Rhode Island during field day activities. So it was pretty much nonstop, and then hunt and search for calls. But definitely being down at Turks and Caicos, we had our anniversary call sign for the Associated Radio Amateurs of Southern New England, W1AQ. We had our amateur call sign, or our anniversary call sign, Victor Queen, 5 Queen, down there. And I always had, I developed a couple of years ago the desire to try to, get on the expedition. And fortunately, Gregg and the Pacific Islands DXpedition Group afforded me that opportunity. So I'm very excited, a lot of planning, supporting the team in their efforts, and supporting Gregg as much as possible. So I guess that pretty much follows your playbook there. I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so we also have Connor, KD9LSV has joined us. Connor, tell us about yourself and how did you get into this whole thing?
Your mic is muted, Connor.
There we go.
Joe.
You're good.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Thanks for our opportunity, Joe and Bill. As you guys mentioned earlier, my name is Connor Dickey. Call is a Kilo Delta 9 Lima Sierra Victor. Was born and raised in Central Illinois. Received my license back in 2018 when I was a freshman at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, Central Illinois area. And that's where I started really into amateur radio then. And it's kept going ever since. Throughout my time at Bradley, I've started to figure out what aspects of amateur radio I was really interested in. And I got really interested in contests, DXing, just operations, and in very technical operations sense.
Hey, Connor, was there any doubt in your mind that you were going to land both feet in contesting?
Did I land both feet?
Yeah.
For the first,
when you happen, right?
When you start, right? It's like, okay, what's going to happen? And then now it's just like, okay, you get to a rhythm, and the deal is you just want to work many people, So, throughout my time, and then at Bradley, I've just operated at various different places. I've got to operate now down in St. Louis area. Now after graduating, I'm down in the St. Louis area. So I've operated at very gracious station operators, such as Craig Thompson and Award Silver. So I've had the ability to operate at both of their expertise, and that's just helped my skills in operating, which contesting and DXing are kind of intertwined with each other, and so just being there in both of those environments, it's just helped my skills just increase. CW, phone, digital modes, all the various pieces, and so.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. And so the question, I guess, really maybe for Gregg, because you've been on so many different ones. The first QSO you had on CW was Glorioso, and that was great. But what made you all of a sudden decide it's not enough to sit in the basement and work these guys? I got to get on the other end of it.
So back in around 2005, 2006, I got to know Bob Altham real well. And we went down to Costa Rica to do CQ Worldwide sideband. And the day before the contest, we got up and both of our radios were dead. And we had two K3s that we were going to use. It was multi-2. And very quickly, we diagnosed that the pin diodes and the TR switch had been fried. We'd left the radios connected to the antenna. It was real dry. It got real windy. Static built up on the antennas and damaged the radios. Well, it's kind of hard to find pin diodes in San Jose, Costa Rica. So we were on Skype with the folks at Elecraft, and we were operating from Keiko's house, TI5KD, and he dug up some silicone diodes, and Don, N4HH, and I were able to repair the radios. And Bob says, like, can you do this stuff? And I said, yeah. My family tells me I could fix anything. So about 3 or 4 months later, I get a call from Bob. He says, this is the call you're waiting for. You want to go to Desiceo? I said, heck yeah. And that was the start of it. It started with Desiceo, and that morphed into Saba, and Joe was just across the way in St. Martin at that time.
Yeah.
Malpelo, Navassa, Beauvais, lots of trips to the Caribbean, Pitcairn. So it's been quite a journey. And, you know, unfortunately, Bob passed away earlier this year, but he's with us in spirit. His YL Mary and his, on behalf of his estate, has been very generous to make sure that we can pull this off. And Bob taught me an awful lot, and we had some really, really good times together. So that's kind of how I got started.
Okay. And Dean and Connor, anytime you want to jump in, we're trying to do this free form. We're just sitting around having a beverage, so you know, don't be shy. So you mentioned some of the other trips you've been on, and I know that you've helped develop this RIB system. So I wonder if we could just talk about that for a minute, and then we'll get more into how it's being used. And Joe and I are just really forever grateful because in 2019, I think it was, we tried to host the first W8 DXCC convention up here. And we just reached out to you and Hal and said, boy, we'd like to see one of these things you'd heard about. Oh, hell, we'll throw it in the truck and drive right up. So you guys drove up from Atlanta. You spent a day with us, turned around and drove back. But we got more great press over that. And I think we were just so, you know, flabbergasted that you guys would think enough to want to come up and show it off. And it was a hit, and it was terrific. And to me, it's like, this is going to be a game changer. And I think it has been. So if you want to describe what a RIB is for a minute, and then we can go from there.
So it's a self-contained ham radio station in a box, basically. The RIBs we're building today are small. They weigh about 29, 30 pounds. One person can carry it. It'll fit inside of the overhead compartment on an airplane.
Wow.
Inside the RIB is obviously the radio, power supply. These are network devices. So there's a router, Ethernet switch, PC for logging, and a Raspberry Pi that does a bunch of what we'll call supervisory stuff. But it also provides the user interface for the remote operators. We've got these things refined to a point where it's actually easier to operate than your home station.
Wow.
We don't use resident antennas because changing antennas when you're halfway across the world is kind of a challenge. So we use non-resident antennas, some antennas we adopted in our testing with George. There's a remote and tuner at the antenna, and there's a tuner in the radio, and they actually work in concert. So when you change bands, the tuners automatically fire in the background and tune the antenna. The operator doesn't have to do anything. When you change modes, like say you go to CW from FT8, you enter your frequency and you hit a CW button, it normalizes the VFO, it turns on split, and it sets one VFO up too. So you only have to push one button to change modes. Same for sideband. You put it in the sideband, it puts it in either upper or lower, depending on what band you're on. Puts the VFOs on the same frequency, puts the radio in split, and puts the receive VFO up 5. So a lot of things we've been able to automate that you'd normally be pushing buttons if you were sitting in front of your home station, because it's important to make it as simple as possible. It's pretty much foolproof. We had one down in St. Martin. We operated on the French side and the Dutch side. We moved it twice. And except for moving it, I never touched it. I plugged it in, hooked up an Ethernet, and it operated for days on end without any local intervention. And that is really the goal of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of reliability and simplicity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
Dean and Connor, have you had stick time with this thing yet?
I haven't had stick time with the rib, but I've had stick time with various other remote stations that are not out somewhere that's in the remote side of things. But it's, I mean, just the deal is that the technology even has just come so far. Even the past couple years, you know, I'm seeing things happen. And it's like, it's just going to keep amazing me as we get further and further that this is actually what is becoming accomplishable, especially in a rare entity perspective.
Sure. Greg, how did you choose Rotuma of all the places to go? Why 3D2R?
It was actually Plan B, Joe. So we were well down the path of going to Tokelau. We were filling out all the government documents. We had researched what it was going to take to get licensed. We were looking for places to operate. Tokelau is a sovereign island nation, and it's serviced out of Western Samoa. And there's two boats. They have a boat for passengers and a boat for freight. Well, the passenger boat broke down. And it didn't take them long to figure out, well, we can't support tourism without a passenger boat. So they shut the country down to tourism. And we had looked at Rotuma. We had a lot of the background information compiled. We knew what it was going to take. And so we just flipped gears, flipped the switch, and changed our destination.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Very cool. So tell us about the team. I guess conceptually there's two teams, right? You've got a physical team and then a virtual team.
That's correct. So the physical on-island team, there's 6 team members. And the reason we have 6 is there are no hotels on Rotuma. But we did find a B&B that could support 6 guests. So we booked it for 2.5 weeks. And we built out the team. First it was Hal and I and Mike, W0VTT. Mike had to drop off for, just things that he had to take care of family-wise. And we added Nathan, K4NHW. Nathan's local here. Been a good friend, relatively new ham. I think he's been licensed for about 9 years now. And it was Nathan, Hal, and I. And then we added Connor and Lukas and Jamie to the mix. It was a bit of a challenge because through the process of planning for this, we realized that the age of adulthood on Fiji was 21 years old. Oh. We would have liked to had brought some younger folks, but we saw it as a risk and a liability to bring somebody on the team who was not an adult to a foreign country where we really didn't have a great understanding of what the local laws were. So that's kind of how this team ended up. The remote team is, there's 2 parts to the remote team. We've got the young operators, which came up to us through Yoda. And then we've got a group of what we're calling mentors. And the mentors are experienced DXpeditioners and DXers. And one of the things we learned about the RIB deployment that we did at Robinson Crusoe is the virtual operators get together online in what's called a Slack channel. And I'm sitting here at my house and I'm watching what's going on in this Slack channel, and the chemistry is amazing. And Glenn Johnson most accurately described it as, he says, this is just like being in a tent on a DXpedition. The conversations are exactly the same. It's about the pileups. It's about propagation's good. It's about, I'm using this technique and I'm getting a better rate. Wow. So even though that nobody's there, they're experiencing the same sort of fellowship and camaraderie that you would if you were actually on the trip. And that was probably one of the most rewarding pieces of the outcome of Robinson Crusoe, was just what was going on virtually in this chat room, for lack of a better term. And we made 15,000 contacts. I think there were 4 radios and 5 radios, maybe 80-some thousand queues. So the remote rig, and it was down for a little bit. We had some technical issues. It made the same number of queues virtually as the other radios that were employed on the island.
Wow.
So you don't lose much.
Was there any truth to the rumor that you added Dean, but because there was no room on the ship, he had to stay in a tube that you dragged behind the boat? Was that a rumor? Or?
I'm sorry, Dean. I told you I wouldn't share that with anybody, and I didn't. I don't know how Bill found out about that. But Bill, we'll talk afterwards.
I'm well connected. So hey, I am curious about the boat. How big is the boat? I mean, it sounds like it's just
Magnet?
Yeah.
Magnet is 160 feet. Feet. It's got a 45-foot beam. Its displacement is just a little under 300 tons. It's a purpose-built DXpedition vessel. It doesn't have a lot. It doesn't have any mahogany or brass or what you'd expect to find on a yacht. Typically, we cruise at about 10 knots because the faster you go, the more fuel you burn. And it holds 28,000 gallons of fuel. That's enough to go across the Atlantic and back.
28,000 gallons.
So how many days will you be on the island, Gregg?
We're arriving on the 15th of November, and we're departing on the 6th. Oh, no, excuse me, the 4th of December. The plan was to allow for a little bit of interruption, if you will, or delay. We wanted to be there 14 days. So I think it's 17 days. Our gear shipped to Fiji a couple of weeks ago, around last week in August. It made it there without issue. Everything got there the way it was supposed to. And it's in storage right now with our agent in Fiji. And it will go on the boat to Rotuma probably in about the next 7 or 8 days.
Ah, very good.
Because when we started this, there was only 1 boat per month to Rotuma. So you got to build in contingencies.
Yeah.
If you miss a boat, you miss a month. So even though it seemed like we were shipping real early, which we were, and it really put some strain on us to get everything ready in time, and it's going to get there a month before we get there. But if we'd missed a boat, we'd be hitting up against a deadline. And if we missed 2 boats, we'd be there on Rotuma and our equipment would not.
Wow. So I'm going to ask a question of each of you, and I'll start with Dean. Dean, what are your expectations? Because I think I know what mine would be if I were to do my first DXpedition. So I'm curious what your expectations are. You know, is it excitement? Is it number of QSOs? Is it just being part of the whole experience?
Well, for me, it's I guess in the number 1 slot would be working together as a team and getting everything squared away and operational as quickly as possible. And that way and then the natural fallout to that would be a high rate of queues. So, I've done the research like Gregg has. So I know, I've been in a jungle environment before, so I'm preparing for that and gearing up toward, accomplishing the mission of getting the call sign out there to as many folks who can respond to it and make it a completely successful team effort. So that's my objective, Bill.
Okay. Connor, same question.
Well, thanks, Bill. I was partly to be the same as Dean. I had just number 1, make sure it's a successful operation. But one thing that I look from my perspective is that, especially with all the additional remote operators, is allowing, besides myself included, because it's my true first DXpedition, is that seeing a bunch of the youth operators operate that are are joining us by the ribs, and operating with that. And then also just for myself is just catching up with a couple other Jamie and Lukas, as they've got various different expertise and skill sets from being over in Europe. It's just a different, it's just a different propagation, different skill set, different things you might learn. And it's just learning additional operating skills that I wouldn't be able to learn without being on the DXpedition.
Oh, good for you. And I'm going to speak for Joe. I'll bet his is to get you on 60 and 160. Is that your expectations, Joe?
Yeah. Well, I've got the island on both bands, 60 and 160.
Okay.
Yeah. So I may just sit back and enjoy the pileups. Greg, what bands will you operate? All bands?
All bands 160 through 6, yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, tell us something about the island. How big is it? The population?
Oh, it's small. I think it's about. You know what? I should pull up my browser. I do know that the population is right around 1,000 or 1,100 people.
Oh,
like many Pacific Islands, over the past couple of decades, the population's been in decline because they can't keep the young people local. They go off, they call Fiji the mainland. They go off to Fiji, they go to New Zealand. In that way, it's very much like Pitcairn, where Pitcairn's much smaller. Rotuma's, it's very modest. There's no tourism. The people are very friendly. I mean, everybody up and down that I've worked with, from, Antoine 3D2AG to our hosts. Our agent in Fiji is the son-in-law of our host of the B&B we're staying in. So that's really helpful, because that communication we don't even have to worry about.
Yeah.
We're on the north shore of the island. We're on the beach. And the thing I'm looking forward to most, having fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because these things, you can get wrapped around the axle and get too serious about this. But at the end of the day, if you can focus on having fun, all the things that contribute to that goal fall into place. We've got a really good team. We've got a good deployment plan. It's fairly lightweight. We started out with about 660 kilograms of gear we were going to ship. And when we said, what comes after O in this statement? That's going to cost a lot of money. Our shipping bill was going to be about $15,000, and that was not including taxes and import duties. So we cut our 660 kilos down to 330.
Gee.
And so I'm hoping that'll have a significant impact on the shipping costs. The gear's in Fiji. I haven't got the bill for the shipment yet. So I'm hoping I don't fall out of my chair when that arrives. But you know how that usually goes? That's usually the case.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have the young folks on the island with us. We've got some great young operators. Propagation from the equator in the Pacific is amazing. As we saw with Jarvis recently, even though we're at the top of the solar cycle, there are wild changes in conditions. Some days are great. You'll have propagation 24 hours a day. Then all of a sudden you got a solar flare. And solar flares in this part of the sunspot cycle are usually pretty significant. And you've got an outage for a day. So we'll go with the flow. We've got 25 or so young remote operators. And the vision here is this is just the start of a process. We want to transfer knowledge and expertise to these young guys, so they're taking the reins and running with this moving forward. I've already got some ideas on where to go next year. I'd like to do 2 trips, but I'm not going to go on 2 trips. I'll help get things ready. I'll help raise fund. I'll help do the funding. I'll help with the planning. But I would like to see an on-island team of all young folks. And there's a group that's doing this now. Jamie's part of it, a couple of German young hams. And I think this kind of thing is going to take off. And the timing is important because we've got a lot of hams, DXpeditioners now, that are kind of aging out of this part of the hobby. And they've got the expertise on how to do the permit applications, work with fish and wildlife, work with TAF. And if we can draw on that expertise and knowledge while they're still in the game, then we can jumpstart these younger hams who are going to be taking the DXpedition torch forward.
Okay. So I've got two follow-up questions. Are you going to do digital modes? And if you are we doing Fox and Hound or Super Fox?
We are probably doing Super Fox. And the reason I kind of hedge that a little bit is I want to talk to the guys who were at CY9C, and I haven't had a chance to. So I want to understand what their experiences were. There's some feeling, or maybe you could say there's a belief that maybe Super Fox isn't as good when conditions are poor, or on polar paths, or when there's an aurora. So I just want to understand this better, because it may be a mix of both. That's probably the most likely scenario. But if we could just stick with Super Fox, keep our rate up, work the weak stations, then we'll probably stay that direction. But at this point in time, I don't have a solid enough understanding to say one way or the other.
Okay. Now you're going to be staying there over a very special weekend. Are you going to make a serious effort in CQ Worldwide, or you just going to be on during that time, or are you not going to be in the contest so you can work people otherwise?
No, it's the first. We're going to make a serious effort. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm kind of inclined right now to let Connor and Lukas and Jamie put together the CQ Worldwide plan. Maybe the remote ops are one station. Maybe we do a multi-2. We've got 5 transmitters. Maybe we have 3 different stations on for CQ Worldwide. We have 5 call signs. Right. Everybody holds a Fijian call. So we haven't talked about it as a team yet, but I'm inclined to let them do the scheduling. And I think Jamie's going to run with the scheduling for the operators. This is really kind of their trip. And I would say, guys, let's talk about some options for how we want to operate CQ Worldwide. Do we do it as a multi-multi? Do we do it as a multi-2? Do we do it as a couple of multi-single stations? I think all those options are on the table. And I would really like to see the young operators lead that conversation.
Good for you. So if I'm putting it together, there's essentially 5 ribs, correct?
There's 3 ribs and 2 local stations.
2 local. That was my question, is how would these guys operate without interfering with the ribs? But they have their own local setup on the island.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And what's recently developed is our host has a Starlink system, and we have our Starlink system. We may very well take a rib and move it to another part of the island and set it up kind of field day style. We have a lot of options, a lot of flexibility here to do some different things. Could you imagine just a rib, a table, a chair, and a Starlink dish on the beach, and that's your DXpedition?
How cool is that? That would beat Midway, wouldn't it, Joe?
Yes.
Wow. So I think you touched on it, Greg, but I didn't specifically ask you what your expectations were. You said you want to have fun, you want these guys to develop. Do you have any maybe the better question to say is, I'd like to have you guys back on when you get back and everything's settled in, and we say, okay, what did you learn? How was it? But what if I ask you, was it successful? What are you going to base that answer on?
That's going to be based on a lot of things. First of all, did we have a good time? Did we execute well as a team? And part of this is we're going to have obstacles. There's going to be hurdles. There's going to be situations to overcome, and it's going to be important that we all pull in unison. One of the things we had to ditch when we downsized our shipment was 1/3 of our coax, but we had 4,000 feet of coax.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we may have to change up our antenna plans a little bit. The antennas for the ribs are going to be these V8 antennas that Tom Schiller and 6BT developed. The high band, the 20 through 10 meter antennas are going to be vertical dipoles. We may have to, when we have those constructed in a way that in 2 minutes you could take one down and change bands if you had to. So we're going to know how it's all going to fit together when we get there. But, you know, we're flexible.
Yeah.
I think when we get there, the first order of business is, you know, obviously to come up with a deployment plan, but to get a couple of the ribs on the air so they're making QSOs while we're setting up the rest of the gear. We had, I think, almost 3,000 Qs in the log from the rib and Robinson Crusoe before they got the first local station on the air.
Really?
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily know the other members, but I know Dean. If you say the objective is A and here's your material, he'll get it done. So I think you got a great team there that's going to execute for you.
Yeah.
Joe, did I forget anything?
No, but I want to compliment Gregg on his thought process
Oh, yeah.
on getting younger hams, and I love the idea of turning the contest over to Connor and the other younger hams, and say, "Here, boys, here's your job. Go for it." Yeah, because somehow you have to break them in, and the best way to get your feet wet is just do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll get a little more heat there than they would in my basement with my 100 watts. I know
Yeah.
that. Connor, does you have any closing remarks here or anything that maybe we should have talked about or you'd like to mention or?
Well, no. You guys thanks for letting us come on and have a various good discussion with learning various things about the operation that we're planning to do. And feel free to make sure to get us in the log wherever you need us at NOS. Make sure that when you work, regardless of who you work, it might be their first time as a DXpedition. So especially as mine, Dean's, and then probably a bunch of the remote operators that are gonna enjoy that. So just even if you needed us, if you need a fill, if you get a fill, that's your bonus. But even if you're through the weekend and you're getting there, you hear it coming down, dying down a little bit, and you need us, and you haven't worked us yet, feel free to work.
Don't be shy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, don't be shy.
Dean, anything that maybe I should have mentioned or comes to mind?
No, thanks a lot, Bill. Just wanted to thank both you and Joe for putting this together, and just to chime in with what Gregg and Connor had mentioned. You know, it's going to be a lot of teamwork, but a lot of fun. You know, we'll learn something different being on the island with folks who are very hospitable. And I look forward to, you know, contributing and making the team, you know, the best they can be. And I want us to be in the running for the expedition of the year. That's my my secondary objective here. So that would be great as well. Back over to you guys.
That's not a plug, is it?
No, it's not a plug. No, it's a promise.
Okay.
Dean, we've done a lot of podcasts, Bill and I have, and you are the first one, and I'm not complaining, but it's me. But you are the first one that has been mobile.
That's right.
So are you by chance in a police cruiser?
No, I haven't been arrested yet, Joe. I am over in
okay.
I'm over at the ice cream plant in Utah, and I joined on and just drove back here to the hotel before I go out and grab something to eat. So I will be redeploying on Thursday morning out of Vegas.
His next question would have been, are you in the front or the back, Dean?
Oh, no, I'm in the front.
Okay.
I'm in the front, traveling in style.
Yeah. Well, this is neat to have a mobile on. Bill.
Yeah. So, Gregg, we got a lot of really generous DXers that listen to us, and how can they help you out?
So thank you very much for that segue, Bill, and thank you very much for having us on this evening. We're still very much in the fundraising mode. And we have not hit our goals yet. Fundraising is going well, but we still have a ways to go. If you can find it within your heart to help support us, we would really appreciate that. Visit our website at rotuma2024.com. We have an option where you can make a donation to support the team via PayPal. or you can send a check into the Pacific Islands DXpedition Group, and that'll go into our bank account. We're getting ready to write some pretty big checks because I know that bill for the shipment's coming pretty quick, and I know that Customs in Fiji wants to grab some money as well. So any help that you can, any way that you can support us, we would really greatly appreciate it.
Well, it's great that you guys are doing this to put a new one on for a lot of folks, to put a band slot one on for others, and getting some young folks involved. I think that's just terrific. It's very honorable, and hats off to all you guys for doing it. It's just terrific, and we applaud you for that.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll put a bunch of stuff in the show notes, and for those of you that follow me on Twitter and stuff, I'll send along updates as you guys progress, and I can't wait to get you in the log. So, Wendy, anything you'd like to mention?
No, I'm hanging in there. I'm excited about it and about having the youth involved. I think it's a great tribute to Bob and to everybody coming along in ham radio. So it's been interesting. I when I met Gregg 25 years ago, I had no idea what a ham radio was. And I still, to this day, I understand a lot of it, but I have friends come in and they're like, what is going on in here? I'm like, I can't explain it. You'll just have to
Yeah.
You tell your friend, you say Gregg's QRV on the gray line. You know what that means, but
yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for your time. We genuinely appreciate it. And anything else we can do to help, keep us in the loop, and good luck to you.
Yeah. Best of luck to all of you guys.
See you guys in the pileups. Thanks.
See you, Wendy.
Good luck, guys. Goodbye, Wendy.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Well, I wish I was 43 years younger. I might take part in this. And I hope you found that as interesting and as exciting as I did. What an opportunity. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the DX Mentor. I would like to thank our sponsors, ICOM America, the Daily DX, DX Engineering, and the Southwest Ohio DX Association. You won't find anyone more committed to DX than these sponsors. I would especially like to thank our guest today, Joe, WAGEX, Gregg, W6IZT, Dean, W2FQ, Connor, KD9LSV, and of course, Gregg's better half, Wendy. I would really like to say thanks to you, the listener, because you're the reason we do this, and your feedback is essential. So if you have questions, or if I can provide help with any DX or amateur radio issues that you may have, or if you just have feedback, send it to me at thedxmentor@gmail.com. Please drop me a line if you've achieved an all-time new one, receive recognition, or have a DX event that you would like us to mention. We would be happy to do that. If you're enjoying these DX Mentor episodes, please hit the subscribe button. You can also click like if you found this one particularly interesting. If you don't want to subscribe, that's okay. Just drop me a note and let me know why. I sure would appreciate it. 7-3 for this episode, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support. I'll see you in the pile-ups.